and we're it's funny we have to change this background because it looks like Seth is on my side and I'm on Seth's side, so I think we gotta go that way. There we go. Now we're good.
Oh, there you go.
So welcome.
I can't even see it from this far away, so that's all right.
But our listeners could.
That's all that really matters.
It does.
Or our watchers, I guess we
The
should say.
16 that we have. Actually, I think we can pull this a little closer.
Probably. So yes, in case you haven't realized, for the first time since I think I gave you a Tavares bobblehead.
Oh my God, that's a long time.
We are hosting
and a Trevor Lawrence baseball card, which my Jets
Trevor Lawrence Jets card,
which I still have.
There you go.
And I have the Lawrence. No, I do not have the Tavares bobblehead.
No, but I believe you have the Jets beat up doll.
That I definitely do.
Yeah, because you have a lot of frustration. Which if Green Bay doesn't trade you Aaron Rodgers, you will continue to have.
We got a lot. Look, we started. This is the first show where we're going to be going basically off the cuff because neither one of us has a computer in front of us. So
all we have on is North Carolina, Boston College, which really isn't very interesting.
And except Jay Billis,
except for Jay Billis, who taught me that Holland exports more flowers than any country in the world.
It also has the tallest men in the
world. That I can believe.
Yeah.
Because I think of Serge Zwicker, who played for Serge Zwicker. Take a look when you're done with the show. He was the center for North Carolina, and I believe he was Dutch.
Well,
he
was like Jesse Edwards.
He was 7. Well, was Jesse Edwards 7'4"?
No, Jesse Edwards is 7 feet.
Okay, well that's not 7 foot.
With his mohawk, he was probably 7 foot 4.
That is distinctly possible.
We started today, and I thought the show today. First of all, we thought it was going to be at 5 o'clock, and it obviously is not. It's tax season, ladies and gentlemen. So
the tax season,
we got
for my beer.
We got shit to do, and
isn't those the words we're not supposed to use?
We got stuff to do.
Or we're not on the FCC. We're not on
no FCC. We're good. We're on the interwebs.
The interwebs.
The interweb. So first time in a long time we don't have a computer in front of us or anything. So completely off the cuff and really way back to where we were starting Blog Talk, right?
Yeah, 11 years ago.
11 years ago we started. Oh, here we go, sir. If you're watching ESPN, the lovely
the last game of the Bayheim regime,
which we'll get to in a second. But anyway, we started this whole charade.
Charade?
This is a charade.
The whole charade. We've been hosting this longer than I've known my wife.
I know. And she knows that too.
Yes.
That's the thing.
She does.
That's the beauty of it.
She doesn't care.
She'll be coming down at some point.
I'm sure she
will.
No
doubt. Just to make an appearance.
And what'll be fun is she's going to start to yell. And then she's going to be like, oh, on video. She's going to
or she'll fix her hair.
Or she'll start doing the mascot dances, depending on what kind of mood she's in.
And the mascot dances may not be a bad thing. It may be more entertaining in the rest of the show.
It could be.
So anyway, so we started 11 years ago, but what I thought this show was going to be more at 5 o'clock was the Knicks making a run.
And then the free agency moves.
Right, and the franchise moves in. Look, the Knicks have made a run. They are a top 4 team right now. We can bring up the standings on it. That's not a big deal, but
right now, other than Boston, Milwaukee, and Philly, you kind of have that free for all.
Yep.
And the way the Knicks have played, Jalen Brunson is looking like a steal at $26 million a year. Randall's playing like he was 2 years ago. And it kind of brought up the question, have you ever had a coach who won Coach of the Year, then was almost fired, and then they won Coach of the Year again?
Well, and then you have also, I think the biggest surprise is Emmanuel Quigley.
Yeah.
And the way that he has played. I've never seen a player play 55 straight minutes in an NBA game. And he did that the other night in the double OT game. I've never seen any player play 55 minutes. Remember, games are 48. So double OT, one of the most impressive stats in NBA history is that Will averaged more than 48 minutes one year.
Yeah, 1962, which I think the year he also scored 100 points and averaged over 50 a game.
Right, but I'm saying he averaged over 48 minutes played a game, which is in another record of Will's that will never be broken.
Right, which is completely confusing.
Yeah. If you look at all the NBA, and obviously we're diverging a little bit, but if you look at all the NBA records, I think Wilt's records are probably the most outside the box.
For
Besides Russell's
11 championships in 13 years.
I mean, individual stats.
Oh, yeah. I think the idea of someone averaging 50 points in a game for a season is unfathomable.
Or 28 boards. I don't know how many boards he did, but
yeah, I mean, it's also why he's considered a top 10 player of all time.
So there was a graphic on Facebook, and obviously I don't have it in front of me and can't share it, but it was the player that has scored the most against the team in history. So so it showed Wilt Chamberlain's face against the Knicks, right? Because he scored 100. Wilt was like a third of those teams. Like he was just
funny how we're having I don't know how we got to this, but we're starting off on Wilt. Everything going on the world. We're talking about Wilt.
We're talking about Wilt.
You know, he's been dead for 20 some odd years.
And women are still coming out of the woodwork saying that.
Well, but he's still sleeping with more people than you are.
That's right. And you combined. Okay, but let's get back. So Durant starts this week.
Yeah.
And he plays well. And the team plays well. And that team, we're watching Jim Boeheim's press conference.
He looks as happy as always.
Yeah. So curmudgeon. Jim Laranaga's twin brother. And so the Suns, I understand that the Nuggets are so far above everybody else. Nobody's going to catch the Nuggets.
No, I don't think it
the
matters.
Grizzlies are 7.5 games behind.
And so
the
is Sacramento.
And
neither of those teams are catching.
Right. And then the Suns are number 4.
Yep.
I'd still put the Suns ahead of all
of them. Oh, yeah. I mean, until Denver proves they can do it.
Until Denver proves that they can stay healthy in the playoffs.
Fair. You have a team led by 2 top 15 players in the world, in Booker and Durant.
Yeah.
And Durant has won championships. Booker has been the best player in a team to go to the finals. Chris Paul is still there.
And don't sleep on DeAndre Ayton.
Yeah.
I mean, 2 years ago on this show, I said DeAndre Ayton was the most valuable player dollar for dollar in the NBA because he was on a rookie deal. He was a rookie deal. But he was that good. And he's still that good. It's not like he's diminished. He's just got more talent around him.
He does.
And he's the 4th option on that team.
Right. Now the question is, last year he didn't want to be there. He signs a deal with Indiana. They match. If his time goes down, how is he going to handle it?
Right. He's the only one. And it's interesting that you say it because I truly believe that Durant would sacrifice.
Yeah.
I believe Booker would sacrifice.
I'm not sure.
We know Chris Paul will sacrifice because Chris Paul really doesn't care.
Yeah, he just wants to win a title.
Right. So if you're Monty Williams, I think the game plan is get Ayton his touches because the rest of them won't care.
Yep.
The rest of them will get theirs.
Yes, they will.
And Ayton could easily put up a 20 and 10 sleeping every night, being in that middle of that field.
There is so much going on. How did we get to this?
What, the NBA?
Your coach.
I think this is why.
I think he's in a little bit of denial.
It's hard.
It's not just a river in Egypt, man.
It's hard.
It's not. Too bad we don't have Paul Miyake to come on in.
It is hard. It's hard for
those of you, the big advantage of us delaying this from 5 to 9 o'clock, which this was not the reason for, is my boy's alma mater.
Which I wear proudly.
He does.
All the time.
Actually, and I'm wearing mine.
Ironically. But I wear the sweatshirt all the time. I wear it proudly.
Their coach, who's been there since we were born, he played there before that. He was an assistant before that.
Yeah.
He's been at Syracuse for 60 years.
Yeah. Since he was 18 years old. He's over 70 years old. So, yeah.
He's close to 70. He's more than 70. Has either been fired or is no longer coaching.
Right.
As of today at Syracuse University. And it's not been a great run for him the last couple of years. This is an awkward ending, to say the least.
Yeah, we've talked about it on this show numerous times as to Gary Williams leaving, right?
Yes.
And how Bobby Knight left. And that's not to say Gary Williams and Bobby Knight left the same way.
They certainly did not.
That's not where I'm going. But the legends and how they either left on their own accord,
yes,
or were told to basically get the hell out.
With Bobby, it was very obvious what happened.
Yeah.
With Gary, it's a little bit more vague. He did have a good year the year before.
Remember, also before Twitter and before
before really the advent
social
of
media.
social media or the significance of social media in this era.
That's right.
But this traveled very quickly, where Boeheim stated, he was going to, whatever the university was going to do was where he was going to be.
He wanted the university to be the bad guy.
And that's pretty much what they're doing.
And they are. And I got to tell. So you asked me at 4:00 how I was feeling about it. And I was like, okay, it was time. It was time. And I've been saying that for a couple of years, but I also said he absolutely deserved the right to leave on his own.
Yes.
I've said that forever. However, in the last couple of games, today they lost by 1, but before today, they had lost by 20 twice
to Georgia Tech.
Right. And then they beat Wake Forest on an anniversary of the 2003 title team. But they lost. They looked awful. They looked like a team that couldn't hit the backside of a barn, and the zone was not working. It just wasn't. They actually went man to man one game, and there was a concept that was sprouted that says they only went man to man, so Boeheim could say, "Look, man to man doesn't work either." I mean, that's not. I love an us against the rest of the world mentality. I hold that mentality for most of what I do.
Yeah.
I'm the first person that will argue with you. I'm also the second person that will say I was wrong, but I will argue with you.
Sure.
He just wants to argue. And in the last 2 months, that's all he's done.
Yeah.
All he's done is come out and say, and you quoted Jason Stark, that is a perfect statement.
Yeah. The comment was, how do you,
Jason Stark once went to Boeheim.
Went to Boeheim. How do you get players to come to Syracuse? Which is a common question. The question I've asked you.
Seth asked me all the time.
Having visited Syracuse, I don't get it. And he said, well, everyone always asks this question, but it's funny, the people who ask the question, the media guys, all of them went to Syracuse too.
Which is true.
But it's a truly curmudgeon response.
Right.
And
he could very easily have given an answer that made him look good.
But he doesn't.
That made the program look good. Yeah. That wasn't all about me. And that's where I think the administration, certainly the fan base,
just got tired
of it.
I think the comments, and there's an irony to Wake Forest being the team to knock them out. The comment he made about how Wake Forest bought their team and Pittsburgh bought their team and Miami bought their team. Now, Miami,
he's not wrong.
Well, no, he's not wrong about Miami.
My point. He was making this a general statement.
Right, but the problem is you can't use specificity without evidence. You, as an attorney,
Yeah, but I think Jim Boeheim was not meant for today's NCAA.
No.
And
I'm not sure what coaches are.
But Rick Pitino was made for this. The first person I think of, Rick Pitino was made for this NCAA. Jerry Tarkanian was made for this NCAA. Tark the Shark would have been amazing in this NCAA, fantastic. Right?
He would have been fantastic.
There were coaches that grew up with AAU basketball, that grew up with players being the spotlight all the time. That's not Jim Boeheim.
No, nor was it Krzyzewski.
Nor was it right.
or Gary
or Mike Bray.
Who retired after a wonderful, wonderful career at Notre Dame. Big fan of Mike Bray. I actually wanted him to take the job at Maryland when Mark Turgeon took it.
And also went out the right way.
He did.
Because he left.
Yeah. Now he may actually coach again. They've talked he knew it was time to leave Notre Dame. But the rumor is he may not be done.
Okay.
Just different coaches leave at the time.
Yeah. Go to Wisconsin.
Go to Ohio State.
Go to Ohio State.
But I mean, the idea being though that Boeheim was the curmudgeon of all curmudgeons, and the fit in this generation. You're right; it doesn't work. But let's give, and I am not a Boeheim guy.
Yep.
But let's give credit where credit is due. 1,100 wins, second only to Krzyzewski. 5 Final Fours, 1 championship. Made Syracuse incredibly relevant for how many years?
Look, I'm telling you, I am chilling up right now. I have chills because, like I said, you asked me at 4:00 how I felt, and that's how I felt. And over the course of the last couple of hours, you get on social media and you read all the people that said it was time for him to go, and it was time for him to go, and it was time for him to go, and they're not wrong.
But that doesn't take away what he's done in the last
right. And those people, those same people, are saying, "Thank you, thank you for what you did. Thank you for making my school relevant. Thank you for the memories that you have given me." I will tell you flat out, I don't go to Syracuse without Jim Boeheim there. Because Syracuse basketball is not Syracuse basketball without Jim Boeheim there. I definitely don't go to law school there. Even if I went there undergrad for the journalism program, I certainly do not continue to go to law school.
Because of the love of the basketball.
So when I was going to law school or deciding where to go to law school, I had 2 options. I got into Hofstra University, which is on Long Island, which is a tremendous law school. It's actually a top second-tier law school.
I assume Syracuse is the same.
Syracuse was a high 3.
Okay.
And Hofstra was a middle 2 at the time. I don't know what they are today, nor do I really care. But the fact is, here I am making a decision on a law school, and I don't want to go to Hofstra. Like, I'm waiting for somebody to tell me this is a bad idea. But when you look at all the stats, it was cheaper, it was better. I could live at home. Like, there was no other.
That was a positive?
It was a positive because I wouldn't have to pay for housing. It was all this was a positive. What was the negative? And my mom, who is an attorney, gave me a couple of numbers of other attorneys around the country to call and ask their advice. Because my mom didn't want to give me the advice. And because I knew where she landed. And truth be told, she was biased. So let me see where else. So I called 4 different people, and they all said the same thing. I have never heard of Hofstra University. And this is before the NCAA. This is before the internet. This is before the Flying Dutchman become the Flying Dutchman. And they're like, you know what? If all I've heard of is Syracuse University just because of their basketball program, that's enough. And so if you're not looking to stay in New York, which I wasn't at any time, and the last thing I ever thought I would do is live in Manhattan, which eventually I did come to live in Manhattan. But at the time, there was no doubt.
You wanted to hang out with me for a few years.
Right, exactly. And they all said, if you're not living in Manhattan, there is no reason for you ever to go to Hofstra University. Yeah. And I went back to Syracuse because of the basketball team for no other reason. And I enjoy to this day the ability to play my trombone because of the basketball team.
Is it rusty?
It's blue and orange.
I know it's blue.
But I have that ability. So when I read the memories of people and how, look, I went to a national championship. I have been to every Final Four that they have been in since 2003. And that's, I think, 3 or 4 of them at this point. Yeah. 96, and then they went to one before.
96 was the Wallace team.
Right, but they went to one before that too.
In 87, that's the
they went to one. I think they even went to one before that. So I think they've been to 6 or 7.
Okay.
But in any event, I've been to 4 Final Fours by a team that self-admittedly is in a place that nobody should ever think to go, in a stadium where now they've redone the stadium. So maybe
I went to a game
better.
5 or 6 years ago
against Georgetown.
Against Georgetown, when they retired Carmelo Anthony's jersey. I think that they retired Carmelo, or at least he was at the game. It's called the Otto Porter game because Otto Porter pretty much outscored Syracuse by himself.
Yep.
I think the score was 53-39. And nothing against the Syracuse people who are watching. I'm sure there's a bunch tonight because of because of the retirement. And if you don't go to Syracuse, watching a basketball game at the Carrier Dome, really not that great.
No.
You have a whole other side of the arena that's not being used.
Yeah.
It feels like a football stadium that's being.
And it is.
Yeah.
So you have this guy that had chances to go elsewhere. Many chances to go elsewhere.
I mean,
yeah. What college coach that makes Final Fours doesn't have a chance to go elsewhere?
I never heard a rumor of him going.
Even if it's just going to another college, he had chances to go to a litany of places, and he made his home in Syracuse, New York, which, trust me, Syracuse, New York is not the place to live.
No, his twin did better on that end.
Yeah. He got married twice. Second time, I don't know what his first wife looked like, but second time,
did really nicely.
Julie did really well. And he reached the Final Four 5 times. So I've been to 3 of them.
So it's 87, 96,
and then
2003,
and then 2011.
The one they lost to Michigan in that awful game.
Yep, and then they lost. They lost to Michigan and they lost to North Carolina.
They got killed by North Carolina, if I remember correctly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yep. I was at both of those two. One in Atlanta and one in Houston. And so, it is with mixed emotions.
Well, that's how it always feels. And I remember the couple years before Gary left. For those of you who don't know the reference point, Gary Williams, a Maryland alum who came back in 91, 92, along those lines, was a successful coach at Ohio State and Boston College. Left Ohio State right before Jimmy Jackson came, and they went to the Final 8 that year after he left to go to a team that was rocked by Len Bias, and they got 3 years of probation. And he built the team up, starting with Heath Booth, and then Joe Smith, and then Stevie Francis, and then eventually Dixon and Baxter, which won us a title. And it was funny, and I had my doubts with Gary. I remember going to the Sweet 16 game where they lost to St. John's, where Stevie Francis played horrendously. And I was wondering if they'd ever get past the Sweet 16, and I questioned whether he should be there.
Right.
And then after they won the title, then the next year where he coached brilliantly, and a team I thought would have gone to the Final Four, except Steve Blake blew the dunk against Michigan State. Michigan State's always been our arch nemesis, although we don't admit it. We were always there and relevant, but the last 2 or 3 years, Gary was not an AAU guy. He did not play that game at all.
Right.
And it felt like the game had passed him by.
And part of it is we have lost recruits. We have been in the Final 2 or Final 3 or Final 4 for recruits since Nerlens Noel. We were number 2 to Nerlens Noel. And that's not to say we should have gotten Nerlens Noel. He went to Kentucky. I mean, but we seem to always be in the mix.
That's how we
never get the guy. And I'm not sure if it's a Boeheim thing. And quite frankly, it may be that Boeheim gets us into the mix. Right?
Yeah.
That's always a possibility. He may be the guy that gets us into the mix. We're going to see with Adrian Autry whether if he becomes Bill Guthridge or he becomes Bill Self. I mean, those are your two, right?
Well, but again, Guthridge isn't unfair. We talked about this. Guthridge, for those of you who don't know Guthridge, because probably half the people who are listening, most of the people don't know Guthridge is. Bill Guthridge was Dean Smith's #1 assistant for 20 some odd years.
Yep.
Took over when Dean retired, because Dean retired very late.
On purpose.
Yeah.
So Guthridge would take the job.
Guthridge coached, I believe, 3 years, maybe 4. Went to 2 Final Fours
with Dean Smith's team.
Right, but still went to 2.
You guys remember you couldn't come out early. You couldn't come out.
You couldn't leave before your junior year.
Right. So,
but still, he still took them to 2 Final Fours.
I get it, but once it was his team, he didn't take him to a Final
Well, he had
Four.
1 year. He only had really 1 year that wasn't his team.
Yep. And
they
got fired.
And they were 20-12, 19-13. And then Matt Doherty came in, who was the prodigal son coming from Notre Dame, who went to North Carolina, and that pretty much ended his coaching career.
Yep.
So I don't think Guthridge is quite the right
They give me another guy that Mike Davis? No, because Mike Davis went to a championship.
But Davis was, for all intents and purposes, other than that one run, a bust.
Well, then it's Mike Davis.
Yeah, Davis is a better feel.
By the way, do you know who Mike Davis's son is? Mike Davis's son almost broke Pete Maravich's record this week.
That's Antonio Davis?
Yeah. For Detroit Mercy.
Yeah, he's 4 points behind, I think.
Yeah, only if they make an NIT bid.
Or a CBI.
Yeah. Anyway, I found that awkward. I was like, wow, that's the same Mike Davis.
He knew.
Yeah.
Well, Davis had a good career coaching afterwards, I think, at UAB.
He did. Yeah, and then
I think the other one is Gene Bartow, who replaced John Wooden.
Yeah, you're going way back.
Hey, every once in a while, I'm old. Every once in a while,
Way back in the day.
Stuff. But I mean, the idea is not everyone is Bill Self.
Right.
And it's a very difficult. I mean, Maryland had 10 years of, for all intents and purposes, mediocrity with Mark Turgeon. Only now with this, I mean, shockingly, with Kevin Willard coming in and us, probably an 8 or 9 seed in a year we weren't supposed to be 500, and a big time recruiting class coming in, there's kind of an excitement again.
Well, I've told you, you never want to be the guy after the guy.
Right. You want to be the guy after the guy after the guy.
Right. And I mean, you have Joey McNamara on the bench. Does he stay? Does he go? He's been their lead recruiter. You had the option.
Autry wasn't their lead recruiter?
No. Hopkins was their lead recruiter, and then McNamara became their lead recruiter. So is he the guy after the guy? The thing is, if Autry doesn't work, do you have to go outside do you have to break the family?
It's probably.
And you saw it, right? I mean, North Carolina broke family, came back family. No, I guess they continued family, right?
No, they
because
all
Roy
been
was a
family.
family.
Doherty was family.
Yeah,
Roy
yeah.
was family.
Forgot about Doherty being family. Yeah, I guess they stayed family.
But they also had a much bigger tree.
Yes. Yeah. The Syracuse tree is not very big.
No.
Maryland tree is not very big.
No.
We're not big. At the end of the day, we're not big players.
No, well, we've talked about this.
Yeah. So
we were more relevant, and you've been more relevant more recently than we have.
Yep.
But there were times where we were both extraordinarily relevant.
Well, I said this to you last week. At one point, we wondered where we were in the top 25.
Yeah.
And now we just wonder if we're in the top 25.
Exactly.
And that's not relevant.
No.
And and Jim Boeheim made Syracuse relevant. And the question is, can it continue without him? And I don't know the answer to that question.
But the other thing about his retirement, he is the last of that golden age.
Pitino
doesn't go back as I guess Pitino is, but Pitino's been in and out and in and out.
Pitino was an assistant on Boeheim's staff.
I understand that. But Pitino coached the Knicks. Pitino came back.
Right.
Pitino is in Iona now.
Mm-hmm.
The relevance is a little bit less.
Sure. He's the last of that generation
of people who also coached their team for such an extended period of time.
Yeah.
Izzo is the next one, and Izzo probably does. Izzo is.
You never think of Izzo as that old,
because Izzo took over in '99, 2000, along those 90 before that, because he took over for Heathcote. He coached a team that won the title in 2000. So he's been there, I think, 25 years, give or take.
Right.
And
that's 22 years less than Boeheim.
Exactly. In 18 less than what Krzyzewski was.
Right.
And it's But you think about these coaches, and you look around. Who do you think is going to be at the same place 5 years from now?
John Shire.
Probably.
I mean, if
they're going to give him a
Hubert
lot of,
Davis,
no,
John Calipari.
Hubert Davis. Look, they may not make the tournament.
Yeah.
And
Calipari's always on thin ice.
Calipari, I wouldn't be surprised if he ended up in Texas.
Texas. Well, we talked about that too.
Yeah, I mean, look, how many coaches are going to be at a place for 15 years after this?
Right. John
Yeah.
Shire. If he survives.
If he survives. I mean, it doesn't say he's going to jump somewhere else, but they may not keep him.
Right. Or he may go to the NBA.
Right.
Or,
Mark Few has the job until he retires. But,
well, you know what? We said that about Boeheim too.
Mark Few has been to 25 straight tournaments as a top 4 seed. Mark Few is not being fired anytime soon. But this is the worst team he's had in 10 years, 15 years, and they're going to be a 2 seed or a 3 seed.
I get it. I'm just saying, if you asked me that question 10 years ago, I would have said the exact same thing about Boeheim. 10 years ago.
No?
They were number 1 seed in the NCAA tournament 10 years ago.
Yes, they were. That was the Eton Thomas team.
That's after. That was Renze Onawaku's team against they lost to Butler.
In the final 8?
Yep. And he got hurt. And if he didn't get hurt, they would have won the championship. I truly believe.
Was that the team that lost to Duke or the team that lost to UConn?
No, they lost to Butler.
No, Butler went to the finals and lost twice.
Right. I don't remember which one.
Okay.
But,
one was 10, one was 11.
But anyway, So
the 11 was the worst championship team.
So 12 years ago, 11 years ago,
whatever.
they were a number 1 seed in the NCAA tournament. And if you had asked somebody at that point, is Jaden Boeheim ever going to be fired? The answer would have been, are you crazy?
Right.
So after seeing the demise of Boeheim, and I say this, the demise of Bobby Knight too, because it's the same.
No, it's not. Because Knight's teams really became irrelevant very quickly. And the interesting thing about Cuse, and we've joked about this over the years, is Cuse and Maryland always felt very similar in the regular season. They were going to be 17-14, 18-13, lose games that would tear your hair out.
Yep.
The difference was no one wanted to play Syracuse in the tournament.
No.
Because Syracuse, 2 years ago, Syracuse was at the final 8 they lost to Houston, or the Sweet 16 they lost to.
Yeah.
But they won
Sweet 16.
Yeah, but they were right there.
Yeah.
They were as 11 seed. They were the last team in the tournament.
Yep.
I think they played in the play-in game. If I remember correctly.
They did.
5 years before that, they were irrelevant. They shouldn't have made the tournament. They beat
Final
UVA.
Four.
I mean, they were down 15 to UVA, and they come back and win.
Yeah.
Syracuse always had that extra gear for the tournament. They were very difficult to play against if you were not accustomed to them.
Sure. So how is that different? Well, I guess my point is, I'm not talking about the teams themselves, but if you asked me about Bobby Knight 10 years before he was fired, never in a million years
No,
would
of course
I thought
not.
that he
Of
would
course
have had.
not.
So I guess I've seen 2 legends really go down. Both of their own doing. I'm not saying, look, Boeheim did this to himself.
By not winning or by being a curmudgeon?
Both. A little bit of both. You can be whatever you want if you're winning
23
national
and 8.
championships.
I think you're fine winning national championships.
If you're in the tournament.
Yeah, if you're 29 in a 7 seed and you in every couple of years you make a run.
You can do whatever the heck you want.
Exactly.
Especially in Syracuse University where they pay nothing.
Yeah.
Well, and that's the other reason. Boeheim made about under $2 million.
Off of the Syracuse contract. He made 100. Sure, he made lots of money off of endorsements and
Sure. But his total comp, I would think, is under 4.
which for a coach of
Right.
Yeah.
You don't get coaches under 4.
unless they're taking the Tom Brady discount.
Which is what Boeheim did for 20, 30, 40 years. But it is a sad day. It is mixed emotions for me in that where is my team going to go next year? By the way, we play in the Maui Classic next year against Kansas, UCLA.
Yeah, but that's good.
Oh no, I don't see it. I'm just like, welcome to NCAA basketball, Adrian, as a coach,
sure.
right? And look, Autry's been on the bench for 15 years. It's not like this guy doesn't know what he's doing.
Yeah, I mean, Kevin Willard walked in a 1 week span. We played UCLA and Tennessee in another top 5. I forget who it was. And he said, look, we were scheduled, we went from scheduling nothing to scheduling way too much.
Right,
For a
exactly.
team that wasn't ready for it. They got their asses handed to them.
Yep.
But it is a sad day. It's also a day that was probably necessitated.
Yeah.
And you move on and you see where it goes.
Yep.
And
it will be very, very hard. Not hard. It will be very strange to watch a Syracuse game and
I'm
not
also
see
curious
the
because
guy like this that picks
because
his
of-
nose every once in a while.
because of the way it went down,
Yep.
is he going to be like Roy, where he's going to show up at most of the games and be a fan? Or is he going to be Coach K, where you never see him?
Well, it's funny because they said he was asked at the press conference, or maybe thereafter, about maybe it was no, I'm sorry. So they held a event for the 2003 team this past weekend, and he was obviously there
Of course.
along with the whole team. And they asked him about whether he has a job after he leaves the university, because Mike Bray has a job after he leaves the university. Mike Krzyzewski has a job after he leaves the university. And his response was, we haven't talked about that yet. And so, and that could be a very Jim Boeheim answer too, right? Being, get out of my face, I really don't want to have this conversation.
Sure.
Or it could be very much, the university wants nothing to do with him,
Could
let
be.
alone the other way around. So, look, the way that the university went down about this today screams he wasn't going out without a fight.
Right.
And, I mean, they basically said, congratulations on your career. He will not be returning. It's the
Right.
end of a legacy. But in the post-game press conference, Boeheim never said anything of the sort and was asked it.
Yes.
And he continually said, it's up to the university. It's up to the university. So he left them to be the bad guy. And they were.
Yes. But there is a loyalty, having been there for 46 years, 60 years, whatever it was.
ADT systems now
You just sit on the remote, so the TV went off.
Probably.
It's funny, I was trying to find the remote so we could put the Big Ten game on.
Here you go.
But,
Here you
thank you.
go.
But, sorry, now I just lost my train of thought.
We were talking about him getting a job at the university.
Yeah, I mean, he doesn't need a job. It's a question of what does he want to be involved with a school that, in his mind, pushed him out?
Yeah.
Or is it loyalty to the fans and the players and everything he's had supersedes that?
I'll go a different way. Does he become Bobby Knight or does he become Roy Williams? Because that's the extreme.
You think he coaches another team?
No, I think the Bobby Knight, I'm not going back to Indiana.
Yeah, until Bobby pretty much had dementia.
Or somebody apologizes and says,
No, I don't think. Well, he went back.
right. That's right.
He went back, but he was.
He went back for the anniversary of the 81 team, right?
Yes, 2 years ago, and he looked. I mean, supposedly he's really not in very good shape, but it's a melancholy day for the Cuse.
Yeah.
I think that's the best way to put it. Not you'd be happy you went through. You're sad it's over, but you're happy you went through it.
Absolutely. I mean, like I said before, I went to Syracuse because of basketball and because of football, and I said I needed a school like that.
As did I.
I laid on the wow, Nova is killing.
Well, it's Georgetown, man.
I
I'm
know,
not
but
sure.
this is like another Jay Billis conversation.
But that's why I was going to put it on just because the other great thing was Boeheim.
Is Patrick Ewing in the next one out the door?
Well, Patrick Ewing should be out the door, but the idea that Boeheim had these great rivalries with Raleigh,
Yeah,
and with Thompson, and with Louis,
yeah, and Lou.
Well, Who's Lou versus Louis?
Oh, you Louis. Okay, sorry. Yeah. And Rick.
And Rick.
Yeah.
And then eventually with Coach K and with Roy. But the great was the Big East run in that late 80s or that late 80s.
So I want to talk about this because I think it's important. Are rivalries in the NCAA dead? I mean, as a fundamental concept, so North Carolina Duke is normally the big thing.
Yes.
I gotta tell you, I don't remember it being propped up on ESPN
Well,
this year.
there was also a major reason for that. Both teams were absolutely irrelevant. And again, being East Coast, we're East Coast fans. We're East Coast. We watch more East Coast than anything else. I can't tell you what Kansas State's like. I can't tell you what UCLA Arizona's like.
That's fair. And UCLA Arizona are two good teams this year.
Right. So they had a great game I think it was a couple nights ago. But it starts at 10:30. And while I do need some help going to sleep, Bill Walton probably could help me with that. God, what a piece of work he is. He is fun.
And we will miss him when he's gone too.
He'll never be gone. He'll just be that giant voice from the sky. But I think rivalries are relevant as long as the teams are relevant.
Okay, that's fair.
When you still look at Ohio State, Michigan football, relevant.
I meant in basketball.
Yeah, no, I get
football. I wasn't talking football.
But basketball, if teams are relevant, it comes back. If Georgetown and Villanova were 4-7 in the country,
this would be a big game.
Right. Unfortunately, Georgetown hasn't been.
They're 7-24.
And I think last year they were 4-26. I mean, Patrick Ewing took one 3-game run and built it into a 6-year deal or a 5-year deal.
Yeah.
So I'm assuming he's done after this. But we have plenty of time to really not worry too much about it because as a Maryland fan, I could really care less. But we should probably transition out of this.
Yeah. To Daniel Jones.
We can start with Daniel Jones. 4 years.
Mr. Jones.
Now he can buy that Picasso now. 4 years, $160 million, 82 guaranteed.
You could buy every album in the Counting Crows.
He could probably have the Counting Crows
performance celebration.
Yeah. My understanding is it's $19 million first year, 45 in the second.
Both guaranteed.
And from there, I think you're kind of in.
No, he has 82 guaranteed.
I'm wondering part of it with the rest of it is a signing bonus.
Maybe.
That would make sense. That'd be about 15 to 20 million. Which is literally a 2-year deal at 30 million, not at 40 million.
Yep.
I mean, do I love it? No, but you said there's no such thing as a bad 1-year deal. It's not a horrifying 2-year deal.
No, it's a horrifying cap hit as a 2-year deal.
Right, but the idea is that the cap is going to jump enormously.
Agreed, but that's where the horror comes in. But look, you and I discussed this morning. You were not getting Saquon Barkley for anything less on the free agent market,
right?
Than say $14 million with at least 30 guaranteed.
Yes,
right.
Agreed.
So you got Saquon at 11 on a franchise tag,
10 and change,
which means a long-term contract will probably be 11 or 12 if they go that route.
They said they just popped up. It's pretty deep in talks.
Okay, so I would say 11 or 12.
Yes,
probably, and also a much better cap hit on year one.
Yep.
So that's the price you pay.
Yeah,
because you couldn't do both.
I think the other thing is, and for people who are complaining about is, what other option did they really have other than the franchise?
For Daniel Jones.
For anybody. What other quarterback are they getting?
Right.
They're not going to trade for Rodgers. They're not going to pay $40 million for Carr, who's I think a similar deal.
And the other understanding is, and this is my capology, is that the minute you give him a franchise tag, you have 32, 33 million on the cap
That year.
as opposed to a $19 million.
Exactly.
You saved 13 million on the cap this year.
Exactly. So, what quarterback would they have? They weren't going to be able to draft one who would be a starter.
Probably not.
You're not going to be able to draft one most likely at 14,
Probably
13,
not.
whatever you are. So, what choice did they probably have?
Oh, they didn't have a. If they wanted to move forward, they didn't have a choice.
Right.
I mean, the young the choice that they had was Jimmy Garoppolo. That was their choice.
Right. Which,
It's not a choice.
not really.
Because if you're getting Jimmy for 30 or you're getting Jones for 40, you take Jones.
You take Jones because you don't know the upside with Jones still. If they can get him receivers, which I'm assuming now that they still have capital. I'm assuming they're going to draft one.
Yeah, there aren't a lot of big time receivers out there.
No.
Maybe you look at if you can get Corey Davis on a good contract. But that's it. Do you trade for DeAndre Hopkins?
I don't think so. Depending on what they want.
Right.
I don't think Beckham's coming back here. I can say that with some pretty solid
Back to
knowledge.
Beckham.
You take your first or second round pick and you take a Quentin Johnston, you take a Zay. I don't want Zay Flowers. He's too much like Wendell Robinson that they drafted last year. Or a second round pick and you get a guy like Jalen Hyatt from Tennessee. I mean, you make a run at a receiver or two. Hopefully your offensive line is better. Evan Neal will be a year more in. And Andrew Thomas had an awful first year too, and now he's an all-pro. And if you have that, then you got the main, we can see what he can do. The issue I had, and if you remember, I completely agreed with what Joe Shane did last year with the declining of the fifth year, but wanting to give him the opportunity to prove himself as a quarterback.
And he did.
He did, because at one point has he ever had wide receivers?
Yeah, he had the Sam Darnold problem.
Exactly. Except he had a coach that maneuvered to his needing, to his.
Yeah.
So if in a year it doesn't work, we've got one more year, and we move on. It's a 2-year deal, for all intents and purposes.
Yeah.
And if we have to have a dead hit of $10 million in year 3,
It'll be more than that, but
well, whatever it is,
it'll
15.
be more than that.
But you get my point.
Yeah.
So I don't mind the deal. Is it higher than I'd like to? Of course it is. It's always higher than I'd like it to be.
Yeah.
But we go from there, and the question now runs: can the Jets trade for Aaron Rodgers?
Oh, I was going to go, where does Lamar go? But okay.
Lamar's not going anywhere. You're not. Who are you going to trade Lamar to? Look, or not trade. Snyder. Is Snyder going to make the run?
Snyder's the only one.
Right. So the question is this:
Nobody's giving him a guaranteed deal.
No, like the Deshaun Watson deal was insane, and unfortunately it's become now the precursor for all these other deals.
It's already being restructured, which is amazing.
Is it?
Yeah. They have an automatic restructure right in the deal where they can push more bonus to a later time. His cap hits are $45.2 million per year every year for 5 years.
Vile.
For a guy that should not be playing in the NFL. But that's a whole
other discussion, which we've had before. But Atlanta said they're not going to trade for him.
Look, there is massive collusion out there right now.
Sure.
There is massive collusion around Lamar Jackson. Because the minute that they extend it, and look, this is not my idea. Mike Florio brought this up on Pro Football Talk, and I agree with him. The minute that they announced the non-exclusive tag, all of a sudden you got Carolina saying, no, we're not interested.
Yep.
You got Atlanta saying, no, we're not interested. Nobody's interested because nobody's going to give him a guaranteed deal.
No. And to be fair, he's been out a third of the games.
I'm not saying he deserves it either, but nobody's going to give it to him. The one guy that will give it to him, we know who that guy is. Snyder. Just because to screw over everybody.
Snyder's going to sell the team.
Because Snyder is this year's Jim Boeheim.
No, Snyder's
a lot more vindictive.
A lot worse. But you look at that team, and to be honest, that team's a quarterback away from being really pretty damn good. Washington.
Yeah.
I mean, they have running backs, they have wide receivers. Their line isn't bad.
Nope.
They got a great front four in the defensive
Love
line,
their
and Chase
defense.
Young is healthy.
Love their defense.
They could use a little bit on the back seven, but they're a quality team. The question is, can you see Lamar Jackson playing in Washington?
Did I ever think I could see Brett Favre playing for the Jets? Could I ever see Aaron Rodgers playing for the Jets? Could I ever see
Do you think you're
Brett
gonna
Favre playing for the Vikings?
That's
I
not
mean,
weirder. Do you think you're going to see Aaron Rodgers playing for the Jets? I do.
Yeah, I do. The only thing I hope is that they didn't give up a first-round pick for him.
Oh, I think they will.
No, I hope they don't. It's not that they won't.
Yes.
This is my problem with, I will say, New York teams in general.
They want the back page of the Post.
And they bid against themselves for it. And where else is Aaron Rodgers going? Nowhere.
Nope.
There's nowhere else this guy is going. So the perfect analogy for me has always been Eddie Curry. The Eddie Curry deal with Chicago. So the Knicks or Carmelo Anthony,
Yeah.
you could pick either one of them, but Eddie Curry is more than anything. Eddie Curry was a number 2 pick in the draft.
Yes.
Number
4. I thought it was Tyson Chandler was number 2 and he was number 4. Or he was number 4 and Tyson Chandler was number 2. I think they were in the same draft. Sorry.
Who was number
people
1?
can check
Ola
the time.
Candy?
I honestly don't remember.
Okay, so he was a top 5 pick in the draft.
I'll look it up.
Okay, he was a top 5 pick in the draft. And he ballooned and got heavy and then had a heart problem. And he had a heart arrhythmia, so he couldn't get insured. So the Bulls had to trade him.
Yes.
And when you have a heart arrhythmia,
He was picked 4th overall.
picked
Because
4th.
Tyson Chandler was picked number 2.
who was first in that
I'm
draft?
looking up right now. Kwame.
So a stellar first round pick.
Kwame, Tyson Chandler, Pau Gasol,
Okay, well, Gasol gets his number retired this week.
and then Eddie Curry, Jason Richardson.
Okay. So Isaiah Thomas's infinite wisdom says, I want Eddie Curry with his irregular heartbeat, and I'm going to give 2 first-round picks because nobody else was trading for Eddie Curry at the time. And one of them became Tyson Thomas.
Not Tyson Thomas.
Yeah, Tyson Thomas.
It's not
right?
Tyson. I know he's the guy from LSU.
Tyron Thomas?
I forget
The LSU guy.
LSU. I forget his.
He was drafted like 4th overall.
Yeah,
My point is, they gave up the number 4 pick in the draft
for Eddie Curry.
And Eddie Curry signs a 6-year, $60 million deal. And in the 3rd year, surprisingly, he has heart problems and he gets overweight, and that's the end of it. And you're bidding against yourself. And the Mets bid against themselves. The Knicks bid against themselves.
The Nets traded.
The Nets bid against
They all
themselves.
do.
And there's nowhere else for this guy to go.
Green Bay doesn't want him.
Green Bay can't release him. They can't keep him. He's not going to the
I was
Raiders.
going to say the Raiders are the only team.
He's not going to the Raiders.
Dude, stop checking your phone.
I'm not. I keep getting text messages.
Gotcha.
One of my friends, his kid is in the Maine hockey championship tonight. So
Okay.
I keep getting text messages. So the point is, there's nowhere else for him to go. And if the Jets give up a first-round pick, which they likely will, just to get him, they need the first round. They need the offensive guard. They need the tackle.
The problem you have is you have a GM and a coach
That need their jobs.
that need their jobs.
I know.
It's the Billy King.
I get it. God,
And
please don't give up what the Nets gave up.
I'm pretty sure they're not going. I mean, and look, that's not the. I mean, the Nets traded the number 6 pick in the draft for Gerald Wallace. Who did the number 6?
Oh, that's
pick
right.
become?
Damian Lillard.
Damian Lillard.
74-point Damian Lillard this past week.
He is the man.
Damian Lillard is the Jim Boeheim of the NBA.
Doesn't complain as much.
He'll never leave.
God bless him. You know what? Good for him.
And there's a whole article on The Athletic on why he won't, or ESPN, why he won't leave. He's
Yeah.
like, this is my town. Like,
Yeah.
I'm not leaving.
Good for him.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, you also know I root for Portland.
I do.
Like-
And Jeremy Grant. I know.
Yeah, it's all about Jeremy.
It's all about
It's all about Stevie Blake.
It's all about Steve Blake and Jeremy Grant.
But I mean, in this era of super teams and mercenaries, it does say a lot that a guy who probably will never win a title.
Oh no, there's no problem. He will not win the title.
Yeah, I could see in year 15, like Karl Malone, like year 16 or 17.
In Portland?
No, go at that point leaving.
Oh,
for a
I was like-
year run.
The problem with these super players is, especially Damian Lillard, is he's a great player. There is no doubt.
Yes.
But he's not a championship player. Is he a number one on a championship team?
We'll never know because he's never had a team. He's never had the supporting cast,
And he can't afford to get it now.
because
That's
he pays
the
himself
point.
$50 million a year.
Right. That's my point.
I understand.
Right. He's the Bradley Beal of the West.
He's a better player than Bradley Beal.
Understood. But
Yes.
he's not.
Yeah.
But yeah, he's a better player, but he's not a more complete player. Bradley
He's
Beal.
a better leader, also.
I agree with that. But Damian Lillard, while a great offensive player, is a decent defensive player.
Well,
and
Beal is
can-
not a special defense.
No, but he can. But Beal can guard two positions,
Yeah,
and
Lillard.
Lillard cannot.
Yeah, Lillard's
So-
too small.
So if Lillard is in a lineup, and we saw this, CJ McCollum, this is you can't put another small guard with him. It doesn't work.
Yep. Well, that's why they have Anthony Simons. Look, they have a lot of young talent. We don't know where it'll go or if it'll become anything.
The only way that team wins a championship is a guy like Sharp, who they just drafted, Sheldon Sharp, breaks out. Or they have a Giannis, right?
Or I was going to say they win the lottery and they take
Sure.
Victor Wembanyama from France.
Yeah, right. Okay. Right. They have to win.
They got to get lucky.
They got to get a lottery ticket, one way or another, whether it's with the 7th pick or the 1st pick. They need a lottery ticket.
Right. But also, look, Portland has won a championship. They've
Sure.
gone to 2 other finals. They've been very relevant many times over the years.
Oh, I'm not.
They're not the other team I root for, the Kings. They're not the
But
Kings.
they're not relevant with him.
They have been in the past. They are not now.
And look, I love what the Kings are doing, right? I
It's
mean,
fun.
you and I are both Kings fans
We are.
right now. And if they were on TV tonight, I'd watch the Kings game. We might
More
look
than
that up.
Minnesota, Nebraska? I don't understand.
But not more than the Timberwolves.
There you go.
I'd watch the Timberwolves. So, okay, so we got 5 minutes left. Would you like to go first?
Yeah. Weird day. My first, very weird week. A shout out to my late fraternity brother, BD, Big Daddy, Big Daiquiri, who died sadly yesterday, 47. I hadn't talked to him for a while, but he was kind heart, would give you the shirt off his back. Maybe sweaty from playing basketball, you may not want it, but he was a really good man. And I'm good friends with his brother-in-law, who's also a fraternity brother of mine. And it was one of those, he went into hospice and one day later he was gone. Brian, you were loved and you'll be missed. Goodbye.
Okay. Well, I get to follow that one.
Hey, I followed yours on that stuff before.
I know all the
It's
time.
not fun.
Maybe we should probably do it the opposite way when that stuff happens.
Yeah.
So thanks to Seth and Carly for hosting me, because this is awesome every once in a while.
This is my basement.
This is awesome every once in a while. We'll do this more. Look, it's been an interesting day. We talked about it throughout the show. It'll be an interesting season. I'm interested in where Syracuse as a university goes, both football and baseball, and whether
Basketball.
football and basketball, excuse me. Yep, football and basketball, and whether it's a football's already had that modest decline, and then they've built themselves up a little bit. But this could be part of the have and have not conversation that we had.
Yeah.
And you could look, the Syracuse could very easily have been in the AAC
Yes.
if they didn't have the right pull at the right time.
Yes, they can.
And right now, that's Boeheim was the catalyst for notoriety with Syracuse in the Big East. And now, where is that? And it's really hard and emotional, at least for me. Look, this guy made the basketball ban relevant. He was always a proponent of us going to games, so he made us part of the team, and so thank you, Jimmy B. I know you will be missed as much as you will be cursed at 1,000 times over due to your final.
Once you're gone.
No, because you're going to see the damn 2-3 zone. It's still around, right? Why can't we just get away from the 2-3 zone? So you'll still be cursed. You'll still be loved, and I think it's a combination. So for Seth Kamens, this is Sean Palmer, Seth and Sean Sports, and we'll see you next week. Have a good one, everybody. Now I'm going to turn this off.